Good morning and welcome back to the second day of our Dublin Citizens Assembly live from the Grand Hotel in Malahide. And we're now going to hear from our four mayors from our four local authorities in the city and county of Dublin. You learn something new every day. I learned from our previous presenters that the word mayor comes from le maire, which is the head of a city, town, or government. And interestingly, the collective noun for a group of mayors is a magnificence of mayors. So on that note, it does give me great pleasure to introduce our mayors, and as we learned this morning as well, they can either be called a Cathaoirleach os Gaeilge, or a mayor os Béarla, or le Français, or Lord Mayor. And the first I will introduce is the Mayor of Fingal, Councilor Seána ó Rodaigh. And the Mayor of Fingal were on the patch of the local authority here, so it's great honour and pleasure for me to introduce you to the Mayor of Fingal. Gromagad.
Gurv míle mágat agus fáilte gach duine ina gáil tá an sásta gach duine eáil an seo. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair, for inviting us, and to Art as well, to come to speak to you all today. I've been watching what's going on online, and it really seems like there's a lot of work going on in this room. First of all, I want to thank you all for giving up your free time for something that's going to have such an impact on all citizens of Dublin. It's hugely appreciated, and we've seen in the past how successful the Citizens Assembly is. Welcome to Fingal. You're going to get to know Malahide and the surrounding areas very well over the next few months. I'm delighted to see you here as you consider the type of directly elected mayor and local government structures that are going to best suit Dublin. Before I begin, I'd like to welcome my three colleagues, the other three mayors of Dublin, our Lord Mayor, Councilor Alison Gilliland, Cathaoirleach of Laoghaire-Rathdown, Councilor Lettie, McCarthy, and also Cathaoirleach of South Dublin, Councilor Peter Kavanagh. I think it was the first year ever that when the four of us were elected, we all decided that every quarter we were going to meet up in a different local authority. So we've met in the Mansion House. They were out in Skerries. We were climbing the Dublin Mountains last month, the four of us, and we're looking forward to being in Peter's local authority. So we actually have gotten to know each other really well, and this has really helped this process as well as we talk to you today. So as I said, I am the Mayor of Fingal County Council. As you heard from our Chief Executive, Anne-Marie Farrelly, it's the third biggest local authority in Ireland after Dublin City and Cork County. In comparison to most politicians, I'm brand new. I was elected in 2019 as a first-time candidate, and I really would never have envisaged that I'd be standing here talking to you as Mayor of Fingal 3 years later, but I'm really happy to do so. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what the role of the Mayor entails. So as the policy-making forum of the local authority, I, along with my fellow councillors, we exercise reserved functions across a range of legislation, which includes disposal of land, making of the development plan, which we're currently doing, any variations of it, the budget, variations on local property tax, amongst others. A really important part of being role is to chair the meetings. So these include full council meetings, corporate policy group meetings, development plan meetings, and other meetings. For example, the Ukrainian Community Forum response at the moment, which involves all the stakeholders. The Mayor's role really is to ensure that we get through the order of business and that business is concluded, goes to schedule. As these meetings take place in a political forum, this can be very challenging, and I have learned a lot, I can tell you. Our council meetings are governed by what are called standing orders, and a ruling of the Mayor on any question or interpretation of standing orders is final. I also have the casting vote if it's a tied vote. I work really closely with our Chief Executive, Anne-Marie Farrelly, and the Executive, and I've got to know lots and lots of different people across all departments in Fingal County Council. So apart from the chairing of the meetings, my role is mostly ceremonial. from attending community events, promoting council initiatives, meeting dignitaries, etc. And this is by far the most enjoyable part of the role, as you really get to see the wide range of activities that relate to local authority. You get to meet the volunteers and community groups who really are the heartbeat of our counties. There remains a deep, deep respect for the office of Mayor, and I have only ever encountered warmth and welcome when I put on the chain of office, and I've never taken that for granted, and it's a privilege that I know very few people will ever experience. So that's the role in a nutshell, and probably the worst part of the role is the fact that it is so busy. We still have our own councillor job to do as well, and many of us still work part-time as well. Also, the fact that it's only a one-year term, it means that you're really only getting into it when it's coming to an end. So now to the additional functions that I think the Mayor should have. We recently visited Copenhagen on an active travel study trip, and I listened in awe as one of the former mayors described the changes that he made to the city. Our powers, as I've outlined already, are extremely limited and being continuously eroded, an example of which are the strategic housing developments, which I know are coming to an end, but which essentially removed public participation and consultation to fast-track planning. Thankfully, the powers are being restored to local government, to local authorities, but it really, you could see yourselves that there were huge problems with it. Local government is the closest link to communities, to all of you. We're the first point of contact for most issues that people have, but yet the powers that we have really are limited. So members of the Assembly, I please ask you to consider serious reform, to remove some powers from central government to strengthen our local democracy. The creation of a directly elected mayor or mayors could be a futile exercise if powers to make decisions remain solely with central government. In Ireland, it seems that we have a mania for centralisation, and this does not serve citizens well, and I see that on the ground. I understand that you're going to be hearing from mayors from other countries later on today. Please note the powers that they have to enact real change. I can only hope that this Assembly will lead to serious reform of local government, which is so badly needed. I know Lord Mayor is going to go into more detail in that when she comes up later. When considering the format for a directly elected mayor, the position should or could be one of coordination of the 4 Dublin authorities, with each retaining their individual constituency. The mayor could function as an effective voice for Dublin by drawing representatives of the elected and executive from the 4 established local authorities to form a Dublin corporate policy group. Functions which could be transferred to the mayor for coordination across Dublin could include climate, energy, transport, housing. I'll conclude by reminding you that Fingal's population, where you are right now, is almost 300,000 citizens and covers the biggest area of the 4 local authorities, making up 49% of County Dublin. Please, I ask you, when you think of Dublin, just to remember that it goes further than the 2 canals. I wish you all well in your deliberations. Gurv míle mágwith as for ord agus ganairi live amach an seo.
Mayor of Fingal, gurv míle mágwith. I'd like to now welcome to present the Lord Mayor of Dublin, Councilor Alison Gilliland.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you everyone for the opportunity of being here today. I think there's a little slide to go up on mine. It's very pictorial, in all honesty. I'm the 353rd Lord Mayor of Dublin. I'm based in the Mansion House, which is the historical residence of the office of the Lord Mayor. You'll see it up on the screen in a minute. The role is both ceremonial or representative, and it's also functional. So in any one day, I can go from meeting with foreign representatives, liaising with Dublin City Council management or constituents on a particular city issue, making a presentation to local community volunteers, and chairing the monthly council meeting, as Seána has outlined, or doing media interviews. The role is very multifaceted and it's very interactive. I view the directly elected Lord Mayor as a great opportunity for the citizens of Dublin to be empowered through the ballot box to choose a vision for their city. And I also see it as an opportunity to augment the international status of Dublin, which can in turn have significant socio-economic and cultural benefits for the city and the region. In my experience as Lord Mayor and a councillor, the big questions for your deliberations are: what powers, autonomy, funding or fundraising capacity will be assigned to the DEM? How will they interact with the corporate bodies of the 4 local authorities? And you heard from the chief executives and managers last week. How will they interact with the 4 councils as bodies of elected members, our councillors, that you interact with? How will they interact with national policy and legislation and central government, a key issue? And how will we make that transition so as to meet the expectation of a citizenship who wants to vote for a vision for their city? You've noted the current structures and roles of the elected members and the chief executives of local authorities. It's correct that we have responsibility and we have powers, but I think in practice it's very much worth noting that these powers and responsibilities are very much constrained by national policy, legislation and government schemes within which we are obliged to operate. And of course, by funding, which raises key considerations in my view. And I'm going to highlight a few examples pertaining to planning, housing and fundraising. Local authorities are planning authorities, and through the development plan process, we consult with the public and democratically decide on a planning vision for our areas. The work of the council and all subsequent planning applications are based on our development plans. That is our Bible for Dublin City. Everything about culture, how we structure the city, how we envision it for climate adaptation and mitigation is in that. However, these carefully devised development plans and indeed the planning application process itself can be overridden by a one-size-fits-all national legislation, as we've seen particularly with the introduction of special planning policy requirements on height, build to rent, for example, and as Seána noted, the introduction of strategic housing development process that actually bypassed local planning authorities and the democratic voice. Similarly, local authorities have a housing remit. However, it must be implemented through national housing policy. For example, we cannot raise the social housing qualifying income thresholds to recognise the high rents in Dublin, and all our housing delivery plans must be approved by the Department of Housing. And believe you me, that is a very laborious back and forward, about 18 months process, which slows down delivery of a crucial resource. The question therefore arises as to the autonomy of the DEM to reject, adapt central government requirements, or indeed to design their own to suit and respond flexibly to the needs of the city as they view them. I noted we're also constrained by funding, and this in turn constrains our budget decisions. A significant amount of funding comes from central government for specific reasons: housing, roads, green infrastructure, etc., and they can only be spent in those areas. Aside from monies raised through commercial rates, local property tax, parking fees, litter and other fines, and local authority contributions, the local authorities have no particular powers to introduce their own levies. An example of one that I think would work for Dublin is a hotel bed tax and an upper vacant unit charge, and that's opposed to a vacant site levy. So for example, if we had the funds of our own, the stick of an upper floor vacant unit levy could be combined with a carrot of a grant to support regeneration to increase residential living in the city. So that's an example of autonomous, proactive, pro-social decision-making that we currently cannot realise to meet a significant need in our city. Other considerations include the role of the DEM with regard to statutory bodies, and Seána noted a few of them: policing, public transport, childcare, early years education, health and education. In some cases, their boundaries don't even align with our boundaries. As Lord Mayor, I interact with these services, but as our local authority has no formal remit over their provision or governance, I depend on the soft power of persuasion, personality and good intent to collaborate so as to holistically and collectively benefit the citizens of the city. One final observation as Lord Mayor within the current structures. The local authority does not have a significant legislative role in community development, yet it is local communities that most benefit from the current structures and also the role of the Lord Mayor. And that is providing a level of sincere and respected gravitas to local gatherings, local presentation, recognising local contributions and generally acknowledging that the everyday local citizen, like all of you here today, local businesses, local services that contribute to our city, make it a place that is vibrant to live in, to work and recreate. I very much acknowledge the small things that we do as mayors and Lord Mayors and Cathaoirleach, but also if we're going to decide on how a directly elected mayor is going to interact with the citizens, we have to look both up, look down and look around. It has to serve everybody in the best possible way and realise that vision, this one here, for our city and our region. Thank you.
Lord Mayor of Dublin, thank you very much for your presentation. It gives me great pleasure now to call upon Cathaoirleach of Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council, Councilor Lettie McCarthy.
Good morning, everybody. And as the previous speakers have said, it is a great privilege to be here. And indeed, it is a great privilege to be elected Mayor, Lord Mayor, or Cathaoirleach, in my case, of Laoghaire-Rathdown. And I am very much aware it is a privilege not afforded to many. So when I put this chain on, I know that I'm extremely privileged. I'm very grateful to my colleagues who elected me to the role. Our magnificent of mayors, as previous Seána and Alison said, we have met and we have worked together, and I think we have shown that no one local authority can work on issues like transportation, like climate, like our rivers. Rivers don't know boundaries. Rivers don't know whether it's the north side or south side, and they don't care. And they don't care if it's Laoghaire-Rathdown or South Dublin. And things like policing, transportation. These are all things where we need to work together. And I think it was very, very symbolic when the four of us at the last bank holiday weekend were up on the top of Dublin, the Dublin Mountains on Fairy Castle and looking down. Mayor Kavanagh was able to look down at South Dublin and point out all the areas that it was, while the Lord Mayor of Dublin was able to say, well, that's the Aviva Stadium and this is, you know, and point out all the areas there. And the same for Fingal, we were able to see, well, that's the airport, and then, of course, I was able to say, well, you know, you're in my patch here, and this is our beautiful Killiney, and there you can see the piers of Dunleary. But what it did bring home was there's really one Dublin, you know, where we can all just look at. And that was very symbolic, looking from the top of the mountain. There's been talk about development plans. I'm very happy to say that Laoghaire-Rathdown have completed their development plan and that we have all managed to, I see some of my councillor colleagues here, we've all managed to stay speaking to each other and talking to each other, which is always good at the end of it. And I did have that unenvious task of having a casting vote, I think, on 2 occasions. But we got through the meetings, and I think what we have is a very good development plan at the end of it. I think at one stage we had something like 39 meetings. And what people don't realise while you're there doing those 39 meetings and waiting for all the other meetings to happen, everybody else, like all you people, are seeing the tree that needs to be pruned, or the tree, seeing the road where the delays are, or you know, all the other issues that people email about us. So the emails and the messages and the WhatsApp and the Twitter messages and the Facebook messages, and of course then there's Messenger. So all of these messages are all, you've been bombarded with them, whether you're there to answer your phone or not, because as a councillor, and as certainly for the Cathaoirleach of Laoghaire-Rathdown, you still have to cope with that body of work. And I think that's something people don't realise, and it is a bit daunting, and it does really ease into your family life, because either you ignore it, or when you go home in the evening, whether it's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock when your Cathaoirleach duties are finished, you set into trying to reply to those answers and keeping track of them, and that's the actual reality. Now, I know my submission was very short and brief at the reform of local government a few years ago, and what I said was to give councillors, to have, in the first instance, to have fewer councillors and to give them greater powers and make it a full-time position. I think the idea of councillors trying to work, whether it's in part-time employment or full-time employment, and be a councillor as well, and do your duties the way you want to do them, because I honestly do not think anybody puts themselves in front of the electorate that really do not want to serve that electorate to the best of their ability. But it's, you know, we're only human beings, and we can't be all things to all people. What I really tried to do during my term as Cathaoirleach was to try and maybe bring the council to the people. And I did this by inviting what I would call the ordinary, everyday people into County Hall. I invited children into the chamber to give them the experience of it. Because I know with my own children, when they were in primary school, they went into the Dáil. You only knew they were there because you saw the Irish Times in their school bag. And you were, where were you today? Oh, we were in the Dáil. Oh, I think I recognised, but you know, they felt removed from it. Whereas I brought them into the chamber, I asked them, you know, to do up a mock council meeting, and they liked the excitement of pressing the buttons and talking on the microphone and having their meetings, and obviously having some refreshments afterwards. And I hope that opened their eyes a little bit to even, you'd be surprised when you ask young people and children what the council do or what they're there for. They actually didn't really know, so you needed to remind them about the playing fields, about the swimming pools, and I think that we have all a body of work to do to let people understand what the council are really about. Last weekend I had the pleasure of being in Vincennes in France, and that was with BlackRock Business Network, and again it was such a privilege to be able to represent Laoghaire-Rathdown and to see the role we can play in terms of tourism. And we all need tourism. And again, that's not something that you divide into 4 different local authorities. And people talk about the cruise ships, which I think is amazing, that's coming into Dunleary Harbour at the moment. To me, when you drive down and see a harbour ship there, it just brings just so much positivity to me. I can only speak for myself. And you think of people back out enjoying themselves again, you think of people on holidays, but we mustn't ignore that, and we mustn't take it for granted that they want to come here. It's not enough we looking out at the ships. We need to realise those ships are full of real people, and these people have lots of money that they want to spend, and we want to encourage them to spend it, and we want to show them how friendly we are. There's no point in saying that we do the Céad Míle Fáilte if we don't actually do it. So I think there's major potential there, not just for Laoghaire-Rathdown, but for the entire Dublin area, and it is something I've been working with. And I have to say I enjoy going out on a tender. As I said before, I thought tender was a dating app, but it's the vehicle that brings you from the pier out to the ship. And I actually felt like I was on a mini cruise. You know, after 10 minutes on that, you feel so relaxed, you're ready to come back and ready for all the meetings. Now, I think I probably have my time up here, but I want to, as Alison and Seána have already said, I want to genuinely thank you, because I know when I saw this come up, I just thought I do not have those sort of hours to give to this assembly. So I really appreciate that all of you have given this sort of time to it. And hopefully the outcome will be good at the end of it. And if anybody has any questions, we're there to answer. So my message to all of you here in the room, including ourselves that are here at the top, is that if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I believe sincerely that we have the ability to go far together. Thank you very much.
Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council, it now gives me great pleasure to present the 4th Mayor of our local authorities, the Mayor of South Dublin, Councillor Peter Kavanagh.
Thanks. I'm going last because I'm the nerd who did the slideshow. A vera in gáil, a ard vera, a Cathaoirleach, a Cllr, a Cathaoirleach, a Dhaoine Uaisle, tá riméid ar an bheith molachide in you. I'm delighted to be here today in beautiful Malahide. I came up, I cycled from Clondalkin this morning, got in early, had breakfast. It's a beautiful, beautiful town here, and I'm very, very privileged to be here. And as you've heard, you will get used to the place in no time over the next couple of months. You've heard a lot from my colleagues, from my wonderful, esteemed magnificence of mayors. So what I wanted to do, going last of all, was to just sort of frame a couple of questions for you. Just maybe throw a little bit out there. If you want to know more about me and about South Dublin, there will be a Q&A, and I'd be more than happy to answer a few questions. I believe you've already seen a picture of me with a Viking, which probably poses more questions than it answers, but that's fine. I want to start with mayors. You've heard from my colleagues, Seána and Alison, around what mayors do. The first citizens of our counties, we fulfil a number of roles. They range from the symbolic to the administrative, but they do not extend to the executive in any meaningful way. So when you are considering a directly elected mayor for Dublin, to be honest with you, my feeling on it is that we need to imagine an entirely new role with some new powers and some existing powers. But really, you're not looking at what does a mayor do and let's put a mayor over the whole of Dublin. You're really looking at an entirely new concept compared to what we already have. This presents a number of opportunities. There are examples of executive mayors around the world that work well, and yes, there are ones that work badly. And I feel that efficiency is achieved and the best synergies are realised where existing relationships between local authorities already facilitate an executive mayor or other oversight mechanism. So, for example, I had the pleasure of going to the football in Lansdowne Road with the Mayor of Greater Manchester and the Mayor of Bury. And over a few pints we swapped stories as to how it would work, because I knew that this assembly was coming up. And what they had already pooled resources for centrally managed waste collection, centrally managed transport, policing, for example. So where there were powers that were already shared between local borough councils, it made sense to put them in the remit of an executive mayor and an assembly that worked with those. And where there were additional ones to be added, that came from the top down. In Dublin, the best example of that is our fire service. Dublin Fire Brigade is already funded by the local authorities. We collaborate on that. There's an oversight mechanism and we work together on that. Unfortunately, I couldn't really think of any other examples, despite the fact that we as four mayors work very closely together, and on a number of projects our local authorities work hand in hand with each other. Myself and Lettie's local authority, Laoghaire-Rathdown, we're working very closely on the Dublin Urban Rivers Life project around reimagining our rivers in the two counties, looking at sustainable drainage systems and the likes, integrated wetlands. We can't work alone on that because, as Lettie has said, the dodder doesn't care if it's in that part of the county or this part of the county. The Liffey doesn't care. And we need to work hand in hand for those reasons. But institutionally, we don't have a lot of those examples. Dublin Fire Brigade is one of them. So there will have to be new ones. With every opportunity, of course, comes a number of challenges. And the question I pose to you is, what role would the local authorities play under a centralised mayoral system? I mean, in a best case scenario, all four local authorities would be well represented by the person of the mayor and any support structures that they have in place. In a worst case scenario, one or more local authorities would be completely ignored. Even the term directly elected mayor. There's 250,000 people in South Dublin, 300,000 in Fingal. Dublin City blows them out of the water. If this is going to be a numbers game, and I'm running for directly elected mayor and I realise all I have to do is canvass the city, quids in, I can get elected, I can get re-elected, and I can safely ignore 3 local authorities. So it's a question worth posing, it's one worth thinking. The funding as well, and this presents an enormous challenge. Where services are centralised, budget can be assigned proportionally from existing local authorities, but not at the expense of retained services. We're already at the pin of our collar. Every single local authority in the country is scrabbling to make ends meet, particularly in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. So where resources are already pooled centrally, absolutely, we can funnel money up to a directly elected mayor or any executive. But any more, and you're looking at the expense of local services. In order to function seamlessly, an executive mayor requires not only the powers that are currently in the bailiwick of national government, but also the funding to go with that from government, not from local authorities. So just some food for thought before we finish. What do you think a directly elected mayor of Dublin should be responsible for? And I was working on this with a number of councillors. I've got my very hard-working South Dublin councillors, Councillor Shane Moynihan and Councillor Madeleine Johansson are here. I've been talking to a few other colleagues, and we just spitballed, could we consider a limited number of executive functions? Could we look at a number of limited functions? Safety and security, housing, waste management, transport, the nighttime economy, for example. Some of this would require a derogation of power from government down, some of it a promotion of power from the local authorities up. But in each case, it would require the consequent funding. So, for example, if you're going to say, let's make the directly elected Mayor of Dublin responsible for transport, then you're going to need to not only take powers off the NTA, you need to take money off them as well. Do local authorities retain their independence? This is a crucial one. What does it look like? You know, are we going to keep the local authorities? You've heard already today, it would be very difficult to imagine scrapping the local authorities. Would you consider a replacement with a Dublin Assembly, going back to one centralised council? I mean, realistically, if we want to keep the number of councillors and the amount of representation that our citizens have in legislation, if you were to combine all of our 4 local authorities, that one county council would be bigger than Dáil. I'm not sure if that's something that's workable. I'm not sure that it's doable. So therefore, if we have extant local authorities remaining independent and keeping their own identity, can a Mayor of Dublin override local concerns? Does an executive mayor have veto powers? Or can they impose plans over the will of local authorities? Every county councillor sitting around the tables here and every mayor sitting up at the top table there, we know the issues. We come up with a very progressive plan and we go to the people and we consult on it, and then we go to the councillors and we vote on it, and there are councillors there going, no, this isn't going to wash. I'm not going to vote for this. So it gets held up because of local blockages. So does that happen on a macro scale when we do this, or do we authorise the mayor to override these concerns? It's just a question. I don't have an answer for you. And is it going to be a one-woman band or man? It could be a man, but as you've seen here, mayors are predominantly 75% female. I know. I will say it is refreshing. I will say it is refreshing to be the only man on the stage representing the mayors. It's great to be in an underrepresented group, and more of that. So in order not to have a one-woman band or a one-man band, what support structures would you put in place to support the mayor and represent local authorities? Would you do a cabinet? Would you do a regional assembly? Would you have them seconded from local authorities or directly elected themselves? These examples, you'll hear about worldwide examples throughout. There's the Greater London Council and the Mayor of London. There's the Manchester Mayor. It's not the Greater London Council anymore, the London Assembly. Sorry, Maggie Thatcher got rid of that one. Yeah, we spoke about that earlier as well. And then if they're seconded, how do you make sure that the county councils maintain their interest? As we said, there's 1.2 million people in Dublin. That outnumbers the other 3 local authorities put together. So do you have a proportionate number of councillors? It's all questions to be asked. But it's up to you to ask them and up to you to answer them. What you're doing, the time that you've taken to do this, is a remarkable display of your patriotism. Tá mé go mór faoi comín agah ar fad agus go éirí go geal libh. Gur míle agah.
Cathaoirleach, Mayor of South Dublin County Council, Gurmila Magat. We will now adjourn to a private session and a roundtable discussion on what has been presented to you by our Cathaoirleach, a mayor and the Lord Mayor of our local authorities. We'll reconvene back at 12:45. Thank you. Sorry, 12:05. 12:05. Gur Magat.